The air inside the Colosseum was thick with the scent of blood and burning metal. Evelyn Carter, her hands bound in electromagnetic cuffs, stumbled as two reptilian guards shoved her forward. Her feet, bare against the cold, sand-covered floor, barely made a sound. Above her, towering tiers of alien spectators roared in laughter and jeers, their multifaceted eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. She straightened, lifting her chin. They expected her to cower. She wouldn't. The Xelthar Empire had conquered thousands of worlds, razing civilizations to ash, enslaving those they deemed useful, and discarding the rest like refuse. Humans, still new to the galactic stage, were seen as weak, a novelty at best, livestock at worst. Evelyn had been one of the lucky ones, dragged from her ruined colony and thrown into the depths of their capital world. Most human prisoners ended up as menial laborers or experimental subjects. She, however, had been chosen for something different. A spectacle. The ground trembled. A gate at the far end of the arena hissed open. The crowd surged forward in anticipation, their hunger for carnage tangible in the charged air. From the darkness beyond the gate, two glowing eyes emerged. A low, rumbling growl sent a ripple of silence through the spectators. Then, the beast stepped forward, and Evelyn felt the breath in her lungs stall. The Vor'Zhun, a nightmare given flesh. The feline predator was larger than any earthborn lion, its sleek, obsidian fur interrupted by jagged lines of bioluminescent circuitry that pulsed in eerie rhythm. Cybernetic augments gleamed along its spine, and its claws, each the length of a dagger, left deep grooves in the sand. It had never been defeated, and she was expected to die. The announcer, a Xelthar noble clad in ceremonial armor, spread his forearms wide, his voice booming across the arena. Behold the pitiful human, a creature so frail it cannot even bear the weight of its own failures. Against it, the Empire's greatest predator. Let this be a lesson to all lesser species who dare think themselves more than insects beneath our boots. The crowd erupted. Evelyn ignored them. The beast was watching her. Slowly, she lifted her hands, fingers trembling slightly. She knew what was expected: panic, desperation, a feeble attempt at running that would end with her crushed beneath the Vor'Zhun's claws. But instead of fleeing, she met the creature's gaze. The air grew heavy, charged with something unseen. The Vor'Zhun's muscles coiled. Its ears twitched, processing the roars of the spectators, the metallic clang of the gates locking behind it. The beast's nostrils flared, drinking in her scent. And yet, it did not lunge. Evelyn's heart pounded. Sweat trickled down her spine. She didn't understand how, but she could feel the creature, its presence pressing against her mind like the echo of a distant voice. A voice laced with rage, with confusion, with pain. The cybernetic implants, the neural conditioning. The beast had been modified, trained, twisted into a weapon. But beneath the cold, mechanical programming, something else remained. Something wild. Evelyn took a slow step forward. The crowd's laughter faltered. The Vor'Zhun growled, a low, warning vibration that rattled her ribs. It did not attack. She had spent months in captivity, observing the Xelthar, memorizing their patterns, understanding their weaknesses. They thought of her species as weak because they measured strength in raw power, in the ability to crush, to dominate. They did not understand the strength of the mind. Evelyn reached out, not with her hands, but with something deeper. Her thoughts pressed against the artificial barriers forced into the Vor'Zhun's psyche. Pain lanced through her skull, foreign, jagged memories that weren't hers. Metal restraints, electroshock discipline, hunger, fury. She inhaled sharply, but did not recoil. Instead, she pushed back, not with force, but with something gentler. Understanding. The beast snarled, shaking its head violently, claws raking the sand. It was fighting, fighting its programming, fighting its instincts, fighting itself. She knelt. The collective gasp from the crowd was almost deafening. A gladiator never lowered themselves. To kneel was to surrender. But Evelyn wasn't surrendering. She was offering something else. Choice. For a moment, everything seemed frozen. Then, the Vor'Zhun exhaled sharply, its ears flattening. The growl faded, and then it did the unthinkable. It stepped forward, lowering its massive head until its forehead brushed against her outstretched palm. The Colosseum fell deathly silent. Evelyn swallowed, her fingers resting lightly against the Vor'Zhun's fur. It was warmer than she expected, alive in a way the Xelthar would never understand. The announcer sputtered, his composure cracking. What trickery is this? A murmur spread through the stands. No gladiator had ever tamed the beast. No warrior had ever forced it into submission. And yet, before their eyes, the Empire's most fearsome predator bowed. Evelyn rose slowly, the Vor'Zhun moving with her. Its tail flicked once, as if irritated by the noise around them. The Xelthar noble above them bared his fangs. Unacceptable. This is no battle. This is mockery. The guards shifted, their weapons humming to life. The moment stretched thin. Then, the High Chancellor himself stood. Silence. The Chancellor was ancient, his massive frame draped in regal dark armor, his 4 golden eyes watching with unsettling intensity. When he finally spoke, his voice was dangerously calm. Explain this, human. Evelyn's lips parted, but she didn't have an answer. Not one she could put into words. The Vor'Zhun, however, did. It turned, not toward her, toward the Xelthar nobles above, and it growled, a deep, primal sound, filled with warning, with defiance. The reaction was instant. The crowd recoiled. Warriors shifted uneasily. Even the Chancellor's eyes narrowed. The Empire's greatest beast, the creature they had bred for slaughter and servitude, was protecting a human. Evelyn took a breath, steadying herself. This wasn't just a spectacle anymore. It was the start of something much bigger. The silence following the Vor'Zhun's growl felt unnatural, as if the weight of the entire arena had collapsed into a singular, frozen moment. Evelyn remained still, feeling the heat of the beast beside her, its massive shoulders rising and falling in a slow, measured breath. The Xelthar nobles stood rigid, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and barely restrained fury. Then, the High Chancellor moved. The subtle shift of his golden eyes was enough to send the arena guards into motion. The energy pikes in their hands crackled to life as they stepped forward in a semicircle around the pit. Evelyn's fingers twitched, but she forced herself to remain calm. Any sudden move, and they would strike. She has corrupted the beast, one of the nobles hissed, his forked tongue flicking in agitation. It must be purged. No, the Chancellor's voice was soft, yet it held the power to crush planets. His gaze never left Evelyn. This is no mere trickery. This is control. Evelyn knew better than to correct him. Control was what the Xelthar understood. Control was the only thing they respected. But this was something different. She had not bent the Vor'Zhun to her will. She had reached it, slipping past the cold programming they had forced upon it. She had given it a choice, and it had chosen her. The Chancellor exhaled, slow and deliberate. If she wishes to command a beast, let her prove she can command war. The floor beneath Evelyn vibrated as sections of the Colosseum walls slid open, revealing mechanical arms shifting into place. Massive reinforced gates trembled as unseen mechanisms pulled them apart. From the darkness beyond, something heavy began to stir. Evelyn's muscles tensed. This was no longer just a test. This was punishment. A deep, metallic thud echoed through the pit. The sand quivered beneath her feet as an enormous figure stepped forward, its plated armor glinting beneath the harsh arena lights. Evelyn's stomach clenched as the creature fully emerged, a war beast unlike any she had seen before. It was not organic. Towering at least 15 feet, the Xelthar Warden was a fusion of brutal engineering and living tissue, a towering cybernetic enforcer used to quell planetary uprisings. Thick, biomechanical plating covered its body, cables weaving into exposed sections of muscle like veins of liquid metal. Its eyes, burning with an artificial red glow, locked onto Evelyn and the Vor'Zhun. This was not a gladiator's opponent. This was an executioner. A hush spread through the arena as the Xelthar waited for the inevitable slaughter. Evelyn exhaled, forcing down the fear threatening to take root. The Vor'Zhun tensed beside her, its ears flicking back, sensing the raw danger radiating from the machine. Then, without warning, the Warden charged. The impact of its first step sent sand flying as it lunged forward, its massive cybernetic arms swinging with the force to shatter bone. Evelyn barely had time to react as the Vor'Zhun sprang, moving faster than a shadow. It twisted midair, avoiding the sweeping strike with impossible grace, but the shockwave alone sent Evelyn stumbling back. She hit the ground hard, coughing against the dust cloud that erupted around her. The Vor'Zhun landed beside her, its muscles coiling in a defensive stance. The Warden turned, its artificial gaze scanning, recalibrating. Then its right arm shifted, mechanisms whirring as a blade extended from its forearm, 6 feet long, serrated at the edges, pulsing with plasma energy. A killing blow. Evelyn's mind raced. The Vor'Zhun could dodge, could fight, but it had never faced something like this. Its claws would barely scratch that armor. And she had nothing. No weapons. No way to fight. No, that wasn't true. She had the beast. A sudden surge of understanding shot through her, and in that instant, she reached again, not just with her thoughts, but with everything. The Vor'Zhun's mind met hers in a collision of raw instinct, fragmented emotions, and something deeper. Trust. The beast moved before the Warden struck. Not away, not to dodge, but forward. The crowd roared in shock as the Vor'Zhun closed the gap, weaving beneath the towering machine's blade and launching itself upward. Claws scraped against reinforced plating, unable to find purchase, until the creature twisted mid-leap, its weight shifting. Evelyn understood instantly. She darted forward, just as the Vor'Zhun struck the exposed cables along the Warden's left shoulder with pinpoint accuracy. Sparks erupted, a brief flicker in the machine's movement as its balance wavered. It was the smallest opening, but it was enough. Evelyn ran. Her cuffs, still locked, limited her movement, but she forced her body to push harder. The Warden reoriented, its targeting sensors locking onto her just as she slid beneath it, the heat of its plasma blade slicing through the air inches above her. She twisted, rolling to her feet behind the machine. A cluster of exposed conduits pulsed at the base of its spine. Weakness. The Vor'Zhun landed beside her, its panting breath filled with anticipation. Evelyn didn't need to speak. The creature launched itself again, but this time, Evelyn moved with it. The moment stretched, the world shrinking to nothing but the rhythmic pulse of movement, of action, of perfect, sharpened coordination. The Vor'Zhun struck high, drawing the Warden's defense upward, while Evelyn dove low, twisting midair as her bound hands smashed into the exposed conduits with everything she had. A burst of raw energy detonated outward. The Warden jerked violently, its systems spasming, limbs convulsing as sparks exploded from within. Its red eyes flickered, once, twice, before fading to black. The machine collapsed, the impact shaking the arena. Silence. Then, slowly, impossibly, Evelyn rose to her feet, chest heaving, her skin streaked with sweat and dust. The Vor'Zhun stood beside her, its dark fur bristling, golden eyes locked onto the stunned Xelthar nobles. A heartbeat. then another, and then the crowd erupted. It wasn't just noise, it was madness. Cheers, screams, disbelief crashing together in a chaotic wave. The nobles had expected a slaughter. They had wanted a slaughter. Instead, they had witnessed something else entirely. A human had not only survived, she had won. Above, the High Chancellor remained motionless. The glow from the broken warden's remains flickered against his cold, golden eyes, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, it was barely audible over the uproar. "Release her cuffs." A guard hesitated, then moved forward. A sharp hiss, and Evelyn's bindings fell away. She rolled her wrists, feeling the phantom weight still lingering. She had no idea what came next, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was no longer just a prisoner, and the Xelthar knew it too. The energy in the Colosseum had shifted. Where there had once been jeers and mockery, now there was something different, something dangerous. Recognition. Evelyn stood with her wrists free, the Vor'Zhun at her side, its piercing golden eyes never leaving the nobles above. The air between them pulsed with unspoken understanding. It had chosen her. The Xelthar had seen it happen. They had seen her happen, and they didn't know what to do with it. A warrior was expected to conquer through brutality. A beast was expected to obey through submission. Yet here she stood, neither conqueror nor slave, and still the Empire's deadliest predator bowed to her will. The High Chancellor had not spoken again since ordering her release, but she could feel the weight of his gaze pressing down on her, measuring, calculating. His mind was a battlefield, silent but seething. The nobles began to stir, whispering among themselves in their hissing, guttural language. Discontent was rising. They hated this. Their empire was built on absolute power, and Evelyn had shattered the very idea of it in a single moment. Finally, the Chancellor moved. His massive form stepped forward, armored robes sweeping behind him like shadows stretching across the sand. This display is unprecedented. His voice was measured, deliberate. It is unexpected. The nobles turned sharply, waiting for the decree, waiting for him to strip her of this victory. Evelyn lifted her chin. The Vor'Zhun growled. The Chancellor's golden eyes flickered. And yet, the Empire does not ignore strength when it appears before us. He exhaled slowly, turning his gaze toward the others. There is no dishonor in what we have seen today. One of the nobles, a high-ranking general, slammed a clawed fist against the railing. You would allow this mockery to stand. A lesser species, an insect, has manipulated our greatest predator. If we do not act now, it will be seen as weakness. The Chancellor regarded him, expression unmoved. Would you challenge the beast yourself? The general stiffened. The Vor'Zhun snarled, its lip curling back just slightly, but the effect was immediate. The general stepped back. A flicker of amusement crossed the Chancellor's face. Barely there. Gone in an instant. He turned back to Evelyn. Very well, human. If the Vor'Zhun has accepted you, then so shall the Empire. The crowd erupted in shock, their voices colliding in a storm of disbelief. Evelyn's heart pounded. This wasn't submission. This was a maneuver. She could see the strategy in his expression, the careful way he chose his words. He wasn't letting her go. He was absorbing her into the game. She had expected this, but she was still outnumbered, still trapped on an enemy world, surrounded by creatures who would rather see her dead than respected. The Chancellor raised a hand, and silence fell once more. You have proven yourself in the arena, but war is not fought within these walls. If you are to stand among warriors, you will face a true trial. Evelyn clenched her fists. What trial? The Chancellor's lips curled. A battlefield of my choosing. The doors at the far end of the Colosseum groaned open. A military transport ship hovered just beyond, its engines thrumming. Xelthar warriors lined the boarding ramp, their weapons at their sides. This was no ceremonial invitation. This was a deployment. The Chancellor's voice was smooth, confident. If you survive, you will be more than an amusement. You will be Xelthar. The crowd held in outrage. The idea alone was blasphemy. But Evelyn saw what he was doing. He was shifting the narrative, controlling it before the nobles could. If she was Xelthar, then her strength wasn't a threat. It was an asset, a dangerous, unpredictable one. She met his gaze and held it. And if I refuse? The Chancellor smiled. Then I feed you to something even your pet cannot protect you from. A test, a challenge, a trap disguised as opportunity. Evelyn inhaled, calculated. Then she stepped forward. The Vor'Zhun moved with her. The Chancellor inclined his head. Then let us begin. The guards escorted her toward the ship, and for the first time since she had been captured, Evelyn walked under her own power. The warship tore through the void, its engines humming with an ominous steadiness. Evelyn sat in the dimly lit hold, her back against the cold metal walls. The Vor'Zhun crouched beside her, its golden eyes scanning the Xelthar warriors who sat in disciplined silence. The atmosphere inside the transport was suffocating, thick with unspoken tensions. They didn't trust her. She didn't trust them. And yet, she was here, clad in scavenged armor, a stolen blade strapped to her thigh, heading into the unknown. The Chancellor had sent them on a trial by war, a battlefield of his choosing. No maps, no briefings, no explanations. Only a single command: survive. She had no doubt this was meant to be her grave. The Xelthar warrior across from her, a scarred brute with dark scales and calculating eyes, leaned forward, his voice a low rasp. If you slow us down, I will leave you to rot. The Vor'Zhun growled, the sound reverberating through the chamber like the rumble of a coming storm. Evelyn smirked. You're welcome to try. Before he could respond, the overhead lights shifted to an emergency red. A mechanical voice slithered through the cabin in the Xelthar tongue, sharp and final. Descent commencing. Prepare for deployment. The transport lurched as it cut through the atmosphere of the nameless world below. Outside, through the narrow viewport, Evelyn caught a glimpse of the terrain, jagged mountains, dense alien jungles, and somewhere below, something waiting for them. The ramp dropped. The first warrior leapt without hesitation, disappearing into the blackness below. Then another, and another. Evelyn exhaled, steeling herself. Then she ran. The wind roared as she plummeted through the thick, humid air, the planet's landscape rushing toward her. The impact came hard, knees buckling, palms slamming into soft, damp soil. The Vor'Zhun landed beside her in a controlled crouch, its muscles rippling as it took in their surroundings. Darkness stretched in every direction, the thick canopy above suffocating what little starlight remained. Strange sounds echoed through the jungle, clicking, chittering, something moving in the underbrush. The Xelthar warriors formed a loose perimeter, weapons raised. The scarred one from before sneered. Welcome to the hunt. They moved in formation, the jungle pressing in from all sides. The mission remained unspoken. Eliminate whatever the Chancellor had sent them to kill. It didn't take long for them to find it. Or rather, for it to find them. The first attack came in a blur. One of the Xelthar barely had time to hiss before he was dragged into the darkness, his strangled cry cutting off abruptly. A single, wet crunch followed. The jungle erupted. Black, spindly creatures lunged from the shadows, their elongated limbs ending in razor-sharp claws, their eyeless heads tilting unnaturally as they swarmed. Evelyn moved. Her blade flashed as she ducked low, severing the nearest creature's limb before driving the weapon upward into its throat. The thing shrieked, writhing, acidic blood splattering against the trees. The Xelthar fought with practiced brutality, their plasma rifles burning through the swarm, but for every creature that fell, two more took its place. Evelyn pivoted, her back nearly colliding with the Vor'Zhun's as the beast tore through the horde, its fangs crushing exoskeletal bodies, its claws ripping through flesh. But they were losing ground. The scarred warrior snarled, shoving Evelyn aside as he fired into the mass of chittering bodies. This is a death trap. She already knew that. The Chancellor hadn't sent them here to prove themselves. He had sent them here to die. Evelyn's mind raced. The creatures weren't mindless. They attacked with precision, with coordination. There was a pattern to their strikes, a rhythm to their movements. Then she saw it, a figure in the distance, barely visible through the chaos. Larger than the rest, motionless, watching. Their alpha. Her heart pounded. If they could take it down. The Vor'Zhun shifted beside her, its golden eyes locking onto hers, understanding passing between them in an instant. They ran. The jungle blurred as they broke through the swarm, dodging snapping jaws and slicing claws, closing the distance toward the alpha. It moved at the last second, too fast, its elongated body twisting, its bladed arm slashing down. Evelyn rolled, barely avoiding the strike. The Vor'Zhun struck high, fangs sinking into the alpha's shoulder, forcing it to the ground. It screamed, a piercing, unnatural sound. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She lunged, her blade flashing as she drove it deep into the alpha's skull. A final, shuddering breath. Then silence. The swarm stopped. For a single, stretched moment, the jungle was still. Then, like shadows unraveling, the creatures vanished, retreating into the dark, leaving nothing behind but bodies and the scent of blood. Evelyn staggered, chest heaving. The Vor'Zhun panted beside her, its fur slick with gore. The remaining Xelthar stood in stunned silence. The scarred warrior, blood dripping from his brow, stared at her, truly seeing her for the first time. No words were spoken. They weren't needed. They had survived, and the Empire would never see her the same way again.